So the liver makes bile, which emulsifies fats, makes them smaller so that enzymes can get to it. The gallbladder stores it. So that green thing up here, that gallbladder just stores it. It doesn't make anything. It stores extra bile. And then the pancreas, we talked about how it makes bicarbonate. And then there's a bunch of enzymes, and that's kind of where we left the class with a long list of enzymes. So liver makes bile, secretes it here into goes through, there's one main hole here for the liver and the pancreas. There's like a little sphincter right there. They're calling it the hepatopancreatic ampulla. Hepato meaning liver, pancreatic meaning pancreas. Right, and then the ampulla is kind of like a sphincter. So you can see how the bile is going to go down, and it's going to exit through the hepatopancreatic ampulla. So that's able to close off if it has to, if it wanted to. And then the pancreas makes its enzymes, and we've got a list of those. So let me put that up there. Here's the ones just from the pancreas. And I kind of had that on the board. So that's the enzyme and the substrate. Now, some of these are made in other places. For example, the first one, amylase, that's made in your saliva. Lipase is made a little bit in your saliva, a little bit in your stomach, but mostly in your pancreas. The rest of those four underneath are all made in your pancreas. So that's 6. Those enzymes from the pancreas make 6 of the 10 that I wanted you to know. There was a 7th one that we discussed from the stomach. So I hope you're saying to yourself, pepsin. Pepsin would be the next one. Actually, I believe we put all 10 on there. So you should have all 10. But there's 6. Pepsin from the stomach would be 7. And then there's 3 enzymes. There's 3 enzymes from the brush border, which I'm thinking is up there on one of these slides. Yeah, here's the other ones. So pepsin's number 7. Maltase, sucrase, lactase, that's 8, 9, and 10. So that's a total of, look at that. Every time I went to go write the word produced, I wrote produces. Pepsin, protein substrate, produces by the stomach. Every time I spelt it wrong. I'm assuming it auto-corrected. No, it might have just been me. But I meant to say that these are produced or made or synthesized. Actually, the best word would be synthesized. Like that just means made. All right, so maltase, sucrase, lactase, those, you could say that the substrate is disaccharide. Disaccharide is a carbohydrate, so you could say carbohydrate. They're made by the brush border, which is part of the small intestine. So you could say that these 3 enzymes, maltase, sucrase, lactase, are made by the small intestine. I mean, however you say it. And I was just reminding you that, like, enzymes like amylase and lipase, they're made in more than one place. So you should have a list of 10 enzymes and their substrates, the thing that the enzyme works on. Because that is a likely question Wednesday. I'll probably ask something like, name the protein enzymes and where they're made. Or I could say, name the carbohydrate enzymes and where are they made. I'm probably not going to do lipase. Because lipase is for lipids. That's the only enzyme. And don't list everything. I know some of you, that's your MO. Like if I ask a question about enzymes, just bam, all 10. You just put down all 10, all the substrates, so you can cover yourself. If I even just say blah, 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 substrate, blah, blah, bam, all 10. Whatever I say that sounds like an enzyme question, you're going to just put them all. Just, and you could do that and then just cross out the stuff that's wrong. Like if I ask you to put all the protein ones, right? Then you can cross out lipase and you can cross out amylase. Those aren't proteins. Starch, lipids, that's not a protein. Anyway, so there's your other digestive enzymes. Here's the small intestine. It's made of 3 parts. I didn't talk about the other 2 parts, and I don't care that you know it for the test or anything. The duodenum or duodenum is the one that you're going to see most often. Because that's really where most of the absorption happens. So remember, the small intestine is where absorption happens. So if you follow the stomach and you keep going, you can see like that there's a stomach, and then right here at the end of the stomach, between right where it says duodenum, right where it's like pointing, that is the pyloric valve, and then the food moves through the small intestine. And there's like 3 parts to it: the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Right, the ileum's the last part. So it's moving through, and the small intestine is absorbing. Well, you've got some chemical breakdown, right? Because there's lots of enzymes getting mixed in with this food, right? But you also have absorption. So the question is, what is it about the small intestine that makes it a good organ to absorb things, right? So the function of the small intestine is absorption. What is it about the small intestine that allows it to absorb things? Well, one is these circular folds. So this is kind of like a section of the part of your small intestine, and they've got these folds that force the chyme to go in a circular pattern. Like pretend like this is like a cutaway, like it's flowing through the intestine, right? And then like the blue is going to be like all the food. So it's just like at the bottom, that's the only place that you see the food, because we're standing up. So all this part on the top is not getting any of the food. Well, all of this absorbs. Down here absorbs, up here absorbs. So the circular folds make this chyme, as it's going through this thing, it's got a spiral around. So it's going like that. I probably didn't need this. Probably get it. But did you get it? Yeah, he wasn't even looking. He got it. He was just looking behind me. Yeah, think of like water flowing through like a ditch through like a culvert, right? The top part of that culvert never sees the water, right? But so that's what circular folds do. They spiral. They make the chyme spiral around so that every part of that intestine gets a chance to absorb. The second thing is that so there's three ways that these small intestines are adapted for absorbing things. One was the circular folds. The next two things are called villi and microvilli. These are villi. So if you look down in the bottom right corner, it says VILLI. Or for a singular one's called a villus. Who cares about that? Just FYI. But they're little fingers, like it's not smooth. The lining of your the lining of your intestine's not smooth. If you were to feel it, it feels like I don't know. I don't know what it feels like. It's like a bunch of little fingers that you'd feel, really tiny ones. I thought I had a shot of it. So there's a bunch of villi, right? They're finger-like projections that come up into the small intestine, and that's to increase the surface area. You want more area to absorb. I mean, the intestines, they're long and everything, but the tube is not that wide, right? So you want to make sure you've got the most surface area you can possibly get. And if you remember this, the gastric pits of the stomach, they went down they went down in there. These are coming out. These are projecting out. But here's you have a layer of epithelial cells, and then you see the blood. This is where the blood vessels, these are like blood capillaries. There's a lacteal, the green, that's a lymphatic capillary. So this is where the food and the vitamins and the minerals enters your body. This is where the absorption happens. So if you're a piece of like glucose, you're going to squeeze in between these cells and go into the bloodstream. Same thing with amino acids, like proteins, right? Proteins get broken down to like all the way to amino acids. Then they're going to squeeze in between two of these epithelial cells, and they just go into the bloodstream. Or in the case of fats, not all fats can just go into the bloodstream because, water and oil don't mix that thing. So here's a lacteal, like part of your lymphatic system. If you remember, one of the functions of your lymphatic system is to transport lipids. So those are villi. These villi on the top here, and I'll show you on the next picture, they have little microvilli, which also increase the surface area. So you've got villi and microvilli. They're both increasing the surface area. So what's the function of the small intestine? Absorption. How is it adapted to perform that function? It's got circular folds. It's number one. Number two, villi. Number three, microvilli. Circular folds, villi, microvilli. Villi and microvilli increase the surface area. The circular folds make the chyme go in like a circular motion or a circular pattern. We're going to come back to stuff on like this so you don't have to worry about it. But look, the microvilli, like I was saying last time, it's so small you can't see it. That's why we call it brush border, because it doesn't, like under a microscope, even a really good microscope, you can't really see them. You have to use what's called an electron microscope, and those are a bitch to get a hold of. Like big colleges, they have them, but they'll have like one, and you just got to jump through a bunch of hoops. All right. You see right here, I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to ask you this on the test, but the third one down is called a enteroendocrine cell, and then you see it says that it secretes hormones: secretin, cholecystokinin. All right, we're going to come back to that. That'll be like the last thing I talk about for this chapter. But we're gonna get back to those hormones later. Those hormones, secretin and cholecystokinin, those hormones make the bile. They encourage the bile to be secreted, and they encourage the enzymes from the pancreas to be secreted. But we're gonna get back to that. I don't even know why I had to move slides. I'm not going to test you on this next slide, but I like to just put it up there. Just to kind of show you that this thing in peach color represents an epithelial cell. So this is an epithelial cell in the small intestine. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. And then these little things right here represent microvilli. But they're trying to show you how certain things, so the purple here, this is carbohydrates, the greens, proteins, and then this reddish stuff is fats. Because those are the three types of energy that we eat in our food, right? Carbs, lipids, proteins. Carbs all get broken down to a monosaccharide. I usually say glucose, but another monosaccharide would be fructose or galactose. But all of the sugars you eat, they get, it's essentially you're eating starch. Carbohydrates, there's three types of carbs: starch, fiber, and sugar. Those are all carbs. Fiber doesn't get absorbed, so forget fiber, because that's just going to pass right through you. Right? But anything crunchy that you eat is like fiber, right? And that's going to go through you. So really we're down to two things: starch and sugar. Starch is starch. Whether you eat it from potato or banana or rice or wheat, right? Sugar, there's different types of sugars. You've heard of high fructose corn syrup, right? That's fructose. You've heard of glucose, that tastes a little different. Malted sugar tastes a little different, but they're all sweet. Right? So sometimes, like if you take like regular table sugar is made from like fructose and glucose. So when you eat table sugar, your body has to at least break that apart into two monosaccharides. I don't know why I do shit with my hands. And you know what? I don't know. All right. So you get the idea. Right, you got to break all this stuff down into the smallest component, which is a monosaccharide, and then it just diffuses. It diffuses into the cell. Whether it needs help or not, okay, fine, but it diffuses into the cell, meaning that if there's less carb or less monosaccharides in the cell and more outside, they move into the cell. And amino acids work kind of the same way. I mean, they need help to get in, but there's this idea of diffusion. Higher concentration to lower concentration. I was totally wrong about that. But they do squeeze through. Well, yeah, they do diffuse. It's saying diffuse, right? So all proteins have to be broken down into amino acids. You see here they're saying dipeptides, tripeptides. All right, even if they enter like that, they still got to be like broken down to just amino acids. There's 20 different amino acids that make a protein. When your body absorbs all that and when it goes into your blood, it's essentially breaking down into one of those 20. Fatty acids or fats are a little different. They're like these long chains of fats, and there's two things you can do with them. When you look at let's take olive oil or butter, right? There's two parts of it. Imagine butter being like the letter E, like an uppercase letter E. The part of the E that's like vertical, that's called glycerol. That actually can be turned into a carbohydrate. So that part of the letter E that's standing up, that gets ripped off, and that your body's going to process that as a carbohydrate. And then you have the three horizontal parts of the letter E, right? I know my E's backwards, huh? But those are the fatty acid chains. So your body essentially takes those and starts ripping them into smaller parts. And then that, you see here, if you follow it through, they're saying to lacteal of a villus. So they're entering, for the most part, they're entering the lymphatic system. That's how fats are going to get through our body. And I was just showing it to you for whatever reason. I'm going to skip this slide too. Let's go to the large intestine. The large intestine does a few things, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to tell you about one thing that it does. It reabsorbs water. It reabsorbs water. So here's the end right here of the small intestine where it says ileum. And then if you look below that, you can see the appendix. What you can't see that great is this cecum. This is like a pouch. But there's your appendix. So appendicitis means that thing's going to inflame. If this thing breaks, what's happening? At this point, it's liquid. It's liquid poo. So that just leaks out. It just leaks out into your abdomen. Right? So it doesn't, that's it. You just have liquid poo, diarrhea, leak out into your abdominal section, and then that might start getting into your bloodstream, and then you'd be screwed that way. So, but anyway, let's look at the intestine. It goes up, ascending, transverses, descends. Then this is the sigmoid part. It's like a P trap under your sink. And then, the rectum's going to hold it until it goes out. So we want to turn this chyme into feces. We want to take about 80 to 90% of the water back. There are bacteria in here. There is some processing being done of food. But you're not doing heavy absorption or anything here. Mostly it's about reclaiming water. There is a sphincter in between. When you go from one organ to another, there's a sphincter. When you go from the esophagus to the stomach, we have the cardiac sphincter. Then when you leave the stomach, there is the pyloric sphincter. And then when you leave the small intestine, you have what's called the ileocecal valve. Ileo for ileum and cecal for cecum. So it's a combination of the words ileum, cecum, ileocecal. And again, once the food moves into the small intestine, the large intestine, you kind of want it to stay there and not go back. But that's it for the large intestine. I'm really making it too simple, but and by the way, this large intestine, like you see where it says transverse colon, some of that transverse colon is pretty high up in your body. Like you feel the bottom of your breastbone, it's just a little bit further down, or the point I'm making is that, if you have pain in your transverse colon, it could feel like it's coming further up. Could feel like it's hard. Okay, this is the last thing I want to talk to you about for the digestive system chapter, and it's the phases of digestion. There are 3 phases of digestion, and I've got them written into slides, so I'm going to get off of this slide in a minute. But one of them has to do with the brain, one of them has to do with the stomach, one of them has to do with the intestines. So, hence the names. Cephalic, meaning your brain, gastric, meaning your stomach, intestinal, your intestines. So let's look at the cephalic phase, the first phase. This is a test question. How do you know? Probably because I wrote it in black and white, and you know by now this stuff that I write in black and white, I end up making test questions about. That's it. It's your brain smelling food and thinking about food, seeing food. It gets you hungry, right? It's activating places in your brain. Your hypothalamus, besides making a bunch of hormones, your hypothalamus controls things like thirst and hunger and fear, but also your brainstem. But anyway, these get activated. So you see food, there's a nerve running from your eye, from your eyeball to your brainstem, and then your brainstem, and I think that was, not that I care, I think that's cranial nerve. Is it 1 or 2? It's one of them, right? Cranial 1, I think 1's optic and 2's olfactory. That'd be your nose. Anyway, those brain stems are communicating with a certain place, and then those cranial nerves are talking to a certain part of your brain. They're hooked up to your nose, they're hooked up to your eye, they're hooked up to your ear. That is, same like you guys, cochlear, trochlear, 6, whatever. Then the brainstem activates the facial nerve, which is all here. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about salivary glands, facial and glossopharyngeal nerves, 7 and 10. So that's all here. 7 and 9. 7 and 9 are going to cover here. Make you salivate. I shouldn't go like this. You got salivary glands right about here. You got ones here. You got ones there. So they're kind of like right in this area. 7's going to be for the side of your face, that one, whatever it's called. I don't feel like thinking about it. And then 9 is going to do the ones, glosso meaning your tongue, right? Glossopharyngeal down there. Your sublingual and submandibular, and then 7's for your parotid. But anyway, what I wrote here, right? These glands are getting, you're salivating. And then cranial nerve 10, the one that we always talk about, it goes down and stimulates your gastric glands. What part of your gastric glands? The mucus glands. Well, actually, I shouldn't even just say mucus glands. It's going to secrete mucus. It's going to start making some acid. It's getting your stomach ready to eat. Right? That's the cephalic phase. Then the food ends up going into your stomach. You eat the food, swallow it, goes into your stomach. I was telling you about this before, that in your stomach you have receptors. You have a couple of receptors. You have stretch receptors. The stretch receptors are detecting stretch. It's that easy. Your stomach stretches out, the receptors pick up on it. When food drops into your stomach, that's going to make your stomach acid less acidic. Yeah. So that triggers your chemoreceptors. They're looking for things to be a certain acidity, like around 2. And when you put food into it, that pH goes from up to 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. That triggers the receptor. Hey, it's not as acidic in here. So that's sending a signal up to your brain. Again, same place in your brain. Sending a signal up to your brain's sending another signal down to your stomach. It's like all wired up, right? You got wires running from your stomach up to your brain, and you've got another set of wires running from your brain back down to your stomach. So you've got like a bunch of sets of wires, right? So one wire sends a signal up, hey, there's food in me. Then another wire comes down from your brain, and it's going to make your stomach muscle move. It's activating the myenteric plexus. And it's going to cause the smooth muscle, the smooth muscle, but what are the layers again? Circular, some other layer, longitudinal, and then the stomach has a third layer. That was one of your test questions. Third layer is oblique or diagonal. So I hope you thought that to yourself. So yeah, food drops in your stomach, signal sent up to your brain sends another signal down, makes those stomach muscles start to move. That's peristalsis. Now we've got some hormones. Gastrin is being made. So gastrin's a hormone that's made by your stomach. Coffee causes gastrin to be released. So gastrin is going to stimulate, it's going to make me make more gastric juice. It's going to take that pyloric sphincter and relax it. So that's encouraging stuff to leave my stomach and go into the intestine. So it's like some people have to go to the bathroom after they drink coffee. If you've ever felt like that, that's what it is. It's no accident. Coffee's making gastrin release, and that's going to make you go to the bathroom. So you're relaxing the pyloric sphincter, increasing motility. That just means you're making stuff go from the stomach into the small intestine. Once our pH gets back to around 2, once it drops down to about 2, problem solved. There's no more gastric phase. Or once our stomach's not stretched out because of food. That's it. That's the gastric phase. So we've got one of the 3 hormones here, gastrin. And gastrin sounds like gastric. It's like the gastric phase is Gastric. Gastrin, Gastrin. Just replace the C with an N. That's the name of the hormone. So, right. Then we're in the intestinal phase, because then the food moves into the intestine. Same idea. You've got receptors also in your intestine. So you have stretch receptors. You've got some chemoreceptors too, but you've got stretch receptors. And so when the food gets into the intestine stretches a little bit. And those receptors send a message up to your brainstem. And what you want to do at this point is the intestine is sending a message up to the brainstem saying, tell the stomach to knock it off. It's given me food. I've got the food. I need to work on this food for a while. Stop giving me more food. Just tell the stomach to hold tight for a while. So that's what it's saying here. Inhibit parasympathetic stimulation. Parasympathetic is rest or digest. You're telling your brain, hey, stop with the parasympathetic stuff. Just, this dude ate a steak, put it in his stomach. The stomach just gave it to me. I need to pull all the proteins out and the vitamins and minerals. So just stop it for a while. So decrease gastric emptying. We're doing the opposite of what gastrin did. And there's two hormones that are going to be released that help with this. One is called cholecystokinin, which you can just write CCK. Lucky for you. When you get but this word cholecystokinin refers to the gallbladder. I think when you get your gallbladder taken out, it's called something like that, a cholecystectomy, something like that. But anyway, CCK, what triggered this hormone release is the proteins and the fats. So amino acids, fatty acids, that's what triggered CCK to be released. So it's telling the pancreas, hey, pancreas, give me the enzymes. Give me enzymes. I need enzymes. I need that list of pancreatic enzymes that I had a few slides back. And you're gonna squeeze the gallbladder. So back to this. So I need these enzymes. In particular, these 4 down here, these 5 down here. I need these enzymes. I need bile. Remember, the gallbladder stores bile. So the food comes into here where my pointer is. We're sending a signal up to the brain, and the brain's going to send a signal back down. Try to close this off here, close off the stomach. CCK is going to go here and cause this thing to squeeze. We want to squeeze out some bile and put the bile into the intestine. Because there's fat, right? These receptors are sensing the fat. So CCK make the gallbladder squeeze. Also, tell the pancreas, hey, give me your enzymes. I need lipase. I need trypsin, chymotrypsin, whatever they are, carboxypeptide, aminopeptidase. So what caused the CCK to be released? The presence of proteins and fats. And of course, you want to deal with those proteins and fats. Well, how do you deal with proteins and fats? It's already liquid. By the time it's in the intestine, it's liquid. So you don't have to worry about liquid. It's liquid. So we got to enzymatically, you got to break it down into tiny little molecules. So we got to let the pancreas know. I've got proteins in me. I've got liquid protein in me. You need to give me enzymes. And then the other one is called secretin. Secretin's going to do a very similar thing. Secretin, but what activates it is acid. Because all that chyme coming from the stomach is acidic. So secretin is released, and it's also talking to the pancreas. It's letting the pancreas know, give me some bicarbonate. I second what CCK is doing. I'm telling you to do the same thing, but I need the bicarbonate. It's not just about the enzymes for me. I need the bicarbonate. This stuff's acidic. I got to deal with it. But it's also telling the stomach, knock it off, stop giving me food. You just gave me a teaspoon of acid. Let me deal with this. And then you can give me some more. Don't just... So in both cases, to summarize the intestinal phase, you want to shut off gastric emptying. And you want to release enzymes and bicarbonate. I don't know what that is. But there's 3 phases. Cephalic, gastric, intestinal. It is a question. So we got like 4 questions right now, huh? You've got, I'm going to write it in the thing. chat box. So we got about 4 questions. We have, what is the function of the stomach and how is it adapted to perform that function? I could take that same question and replace the word small intestine for stomach. Adapted to perform that. There's going to be spelling errors here. There. I might ask both. I might ask just one of them. I don't know. You got to know the enzymes and substrates. That means what do they work on? What do the enzymes work on? And where they are made. So that's 3. The thing that we just went over now is called the phases of digestion. That's 4. We've got 4 questions so far. Can't think of any other ones.
Actually, you have 33 total on the page.
Well, yeah. So these you're gonna add. It's just that I don't know. Like you see where I wrote phases of digestion? I might say explain the phases of digestion, right? Because that's not going to be enough that you just put cephalic, gastric, intestinal. It's not enough. I want to know what that means, like what's happening. Again, explaining it gets you a lot further if you kind of have an idea of what's going on, but you're not remembering all the words. Oh, what's that? Like, I don't remember. I don't know what word, but whatever word you don't remember. A 5th thing, I guess I'll just write it now because I'm going to go over it. I don't know how to make it a question though. We're going to talk about a few electrolytes. So there's like 3 that I want you to know about. Include their lab values. So there's a 5th one. I'm going to give you one more, and I'm going to write it now, and then I'll do the lecture. It's not long. Functions of the kidney. I said functions. It's not, the kidney doesn't do just one thing. We think that it just cleans our blood to make pee. That's not all it does. That's not even its most important job. If I had to give it just one job, it would not be clean the urine. Do you know what it is? It's okay if you don't. It's like a cliffhanger. You're going to have to find out. All right. This is not really all the urinary system. I took out, oh, I have to open it for you. I took out a lot of slides because we just don't have a lot of time left. But this is essentially what it is. You see, you've got the, and you know, I'm not going to ask you about this on a test. Well, you already know what the test questions are. I think I gave you a total of 6 just a few minutes ago, right? And I'll pick 5 of those. And then 10 are going to come from um, the whatever you call that thing that I put on under modules. You know what the questions are. There's not any real surprises. There's your urinary system. What's this big blue thing coming up and down? And it's not labeled. Oh, yes, it is. Damn it. All right. Inferior vena cava. This is the aorta going down, right? And so if you follow it, you can't really see it, but there's a artery going into the renal artery, and then here's the renal vein coming out. So, and then here's the ureter. That's where all the pee goes. Down to the bladder. These fallopian tubes have nothing to do with it, but it's going. So I shouldn't have went this way. I put the ureter into the wrong system, and I came down here. No, the ureter past the fallopian tubes and the ovaries down into the bladder, and then urethra. That's your urinary system. Kidneys, ureter, bladder, urethra. There's your question. Function of the kidneys. Number 1, regulate ions, regulate electrolytes. Before you die from toxic blood, you're going to die from jacked up electrolytes. Gonna mess up your heart. Remember how we used them to make the heart beat? And these are familiar to you: sodium, potassium, calcium. Right? You're gonna kill yourself with your heart before you die of something else. You're gonna get too. Well, anyway, to regulate these ions, lots of ions. I'm putting here blood ions, but we can call them electrolytes. That's what electrolytes are. They got this drink I really like at Racetrack, but it's total bullshit, right? But I'm buying it anyway because I don't know. It tastes like a liquid vitamin pill. It's called Liquid IV, and it's expensive, right? So I didn't buy it today. I got the chicken empanada instead, and I got a Gatorade. But it's like electrolytes. That bullshit. It's salt, right? Look. If you look at the electrolytes here, sodium, chlorine, that's salt, right? So we can just put salt in something, in some sugar water, and call that electrolyte. If you look at how much potassium's in there, which is really what I want in my electrolytes, hardly any. They don't ever give you potassium. Gatorade doesn't give you any potassium. Gatorade's like salt and sugar. I'm not saying that it's not good to drink when you're exercising and sweating a lot. It's probably a little bit better than water, but it's not. Look at the RDA and you'll see you're not really getting what you think you're getting. So anyway, they're minerals, but they're also electrolytes. Electrolytes are like major minerals that we consume. There's some minerals that are electrolytes and there's some that are not. For example, iron. Iron's not an electrolyte. Iodine's not an electrolyte. There's just a few. There's 7 or something, right? Sodium, potassium, calcium, chlorine, magnesium, phosphorus, and probably something else that I'm missing. Right. Those are electrolytes. Like, they're used all the time, and they do lots of things. So regulate electrolytes, or you could say blood ion. They're regulating these things. I just gave you a few examples. They're regulating your pH. How? Well, I'm telling you here. Your kidneys can make bicarbonate. That's what the HCO3 negative thing is. That's what bicarbonate is. And I put it like that because sometimes they write it like that. Like sometimes in like medicine, I see it written like that instead of saying bicarb. Right? So they're going to call bicarbonate bicarb, or sodium bicarbonate. They'll just say bicarb, or you might see it written on something like that HCO3 thing. So if you see it, that's what it is. So your kidneys can make bicarbonate, which is an antacid. Your kidneys can decide how much protons they want to get rid of or keep. So remember, the protons, H pluses, those protons are related to how acidic things are. The HCO3 bicarbonate, that's related to how basic things are. So your kidneys can make them or excrete the protons. So by that way, your kidneys are constantly maintaining the pH of your blood. Because pH of your blood's got to be 7.4. 7.3, unacceptable. Even that 0.1, it's not acceptable. 7.5, no. It's got to be 7.4. With your blood, it's got to be, you can't play around with it. Blood volume regulation. We already know how it does that. If you think about it, you already know the answer. How does your kidneys, can you think of any hormones that the kidneys might influence the kidneys to keep water or pee out more water? I know you can, and it's going to be on your test. Yes, antidiuretic hormone that I know you're thinking of. And you're thinking of aldosterone? Yes. Especially, keeping water. No, now we're thinking of we're thinking of ADH and aldosterone. They both keep water. By keeping water in your body, you keep more blood. Or by getting rid of water, you lower the amount of blood that you have. And you could play with some of the ions too. By keeping sodium, you keep water. By getting rid of sodium, you keep water. Potassium's actually related to water also. We just never talked about it. But anyway, blood volume regulation, excretion of waste. Of course. I didn't mean to put it last. It's very important, but I mean, they're all important. Kidneys are like so important, and we're not spending any time on them. I feel guilty about it. It's an important chapter. Heart, kidneys, probably, I don't know. I can't dwell on it, can I? But this is the function of the kidneys. This is kind of what they look like. The main functional unit of a kidney is a nephron, that thing in yellow. You've got millions of them, and this is where the blood meets. I don't know how to say it, but this is like in the kidney, like the kidneys filter your blood and pull out all the garbage. This is where it happens in the nephron. So let me show you, like right here in yellow, let me show you a bigger picture of it. That's a bigger picture of it. There's 3 parts to it. Well, shouldn't say that. There's more than that. In the middle here, there's what's called a glomerulus, like that round part. Oh, I gotta show you, like that round part. So there's a glomerulus, and you notice inside there's those little blood capillaries. So this is where stuff from your blood is getting pushed in to the nephron. And once the nephron gets it, it's going to like exchange stuff back and forth. Like, okay, I'll take the urea, but you gave me a lot of water. I don't need all this water. You know, blood supply, you take that water back. Oh, you got more like urea for me or proteins or something? Okay, give it to me, but you know, you take this glucose back. You gave me too much glucose. I don't actually need it. And so there's like this exchange happening as it goes through these tubes. So there's this thing here called a convoluted tube, because it looks all convoluted, right? So proximal convoluted tube. Then it goes way down called loop of Henle. And then on this side, it's not really showing you it being all convoluted, but it is. It's called the distal convoluted tubule. So you've got like three parts of this tube. Proximal convoluted tubule, proximal convoluted tubule, which they always say like PCT, loop of Henle, and then the DCT. And there's exchanges happening. I'll make sure I don't have it in a slide. I'm not going to do this. Well, here, I'll do it. Now I'm just going to keep it on this one. So you have initial stuff that gets pushed into the kidney from the blood, and that's called like filtered fluid. And this filtered fluid is going to flow through here. Filtered fluid is like, that's not urine. That's not the finished product. There's a lot of good stuff that got pushed through with that first batch of filtered fluid. So if you're talking about this stuff right at the beginning, right in the proximal convoluted tubule, this stuff that got pushed out from the blood, there's a lot of good, useful stuff still in it. It's not all waste. Right? So as it's going through, you see there's like blood, there's these like paratubular capillaries. There's blood supply all around it. As you follow that tube, you see that there's blood vessels next to it all the way through. So there's a constant exchange, right? And we can even use these words again: filtration, reabsorption. It's called filtration, secretion, reabsorption. Stuff's moving back and forth. That's my point. That by the time it gets to the end here, in this like collecting duct, it's mostly stuff that we decided we don't want. But I'll give you an example of, there's like a bunch of gates built into these tubes. Like the cells have gates, and they're called aquaporins, and they're for water. So you ever notice that when you drink alcohol, which you should never do, when you drink alcohol, you pee more than you normally pee, not just because of the amount of alcohol you drank. You know, like if you drink a cup of wine, you wouldn't pee. It's not that you're just going to pee a cup of pee out. No, it's going to be more, because what it's doing is it's opening the aquaporins. It's opening the water gates right in the convoluted tubule. Or if you know someone that takes, like, they call them water pills, this is exactly what they're doing. They're opening all these water gates, these floodgates right here in the distal convoluted, most of them in the distal convoluted tubule. And so they're making water go back opposite way. Instead of water going into the blood, more water is going from the blood into the distal convoluted tubule. And that's why you're peeing more. It all happens at the distal convoluted tubule. Some of them happen down here at the loop of Henle, like right here. So you have some diuretics that are called like loop diuretics, and some diuretics that are called DCT diuretics, distal convoluted tubule. It just depends on where the water exchange is happening. But that's what it's doing. It's opening these gates in your cells of the tube, and it's making like water go into the tube or water go out of the tube. In this case of a diuretic, we're making water go into the tube. But by controlling how much water moves in and out of these tubes, we make your urine more concentrated or less concentrated. Like you see, like you drink a whole lot of liquid and then you notice your urine is clear. It's clear like water, right? Because that's what happened here in like the loop of Henle and the convoluted tubules. Those gates opened up and pushed water from the tube back into the blood again. Opposite. Push water from the blood into the tube. Or if you are dehydrated and your urine's like nasty, smelly, dark yellow color, same thing but moving in the other direction, right? Those gates opened and your nephron pushed water into the blood. It's like, look, you're obviously thirsty. I don't need this much water. Bloodstream, you can have it back. I just need enough to get the pee out, like all the stuff. I don't need extra. All right, I probably screwed that up. Let me get to, I wish I could do this with you. I'm not going to put this on a test. What I wanted to tell you is, what I wanted you to know is like one of the effects of having high blood pressure, right? So let's call a normal blood pressure 120/80, just to say a number, right? All right, so when you have, let me go back to here. So let's say you have, instead of 120/80, let's say your blood pressure, we'll just make it 20 higher, right? So it's not 120/80, it's 140/100. It's pretty high, right? But it's only 20 points higher, right? But why does it matter just 20 points higher? Because you're making the blood pressure here, right here, higher. These are very delicate. Nephrons are really tiny, delicate, whatever they are. They break really easily. You can't jam a bunch of, the pressure's low by the time it's here, by the way. It's like, what was I saying, 55? So it's 55, right? In your arm, it's like around 100, right? In your kidney, it's around 55. Oh, wait, there it is. I saw it. In your kidney, it's like 55. So this is 55, but it has to bust through the wall of this glomerulus, so that relieves some of its pressure. And then don't forget there's solutes in this blood, so that's kind of pulling water back. That relieves some of the pressure. And so by the time you actually get into the nephron, by the time the blood pressure gets into the nephron, it's only 10. So your blood pressure in your arm is 120/80. Let's average those two numbers together, the 120 and the 80. We're at 100, right? So we can say that the blood pressure in your arm is 100. By the time it goes into the kidney, it's like 55. By the time it's in the nephron, the tubes, it's all the way down to 10. It's all the way down to 10. So what happens if we have a blood pressure that's like 20 higher? If you have a blood pressure that's 20 higher, that's going to make this go up from 55 to 75. And then after we subtract everything, the real end pressure goes from like 10 to, let's say, 20. It becomes too high. Going from 10 millimeters of mercury pressure to 20, it's like it's too much. This is like one of the first things that starts happening when you have like chronic high blood pressure. It starts blowing out all these nephrons. and you've got millions of them, but you keep blowing them out, then you have to go on dialysis. So that's why people on high blood pressure, you want to like take water pills. Well, water pills, you're making people dehydrated. They're living in like a state of dehydration. Yeah, good. Better than blowing out all your nephrons. You're ruining your kidneys. I mean, you just got two bad choices to make. Which choice is worse? I'd rather be dehydrated every day than screw up my kidneys. Don't want to go to DaVita. Not to knock them, but it's just. All right. You know what I didn't put in here? I didn't put any electrolytes, so I'm going to have to do it. Oh, I did. Yes. Electrolytes. This slide is the one I'm going to ask you about. Do I have more on it? Put it all in one slide. All right. There's lots of electrolytes. Calcium's an electrolyte. Magnesium's an electrolyte. Phosphorus is an electrolyte. I just put 3. I don't know why I chose these. So, sodium. Let's look at this word. Sodium, the main extracellular cation. Let's talk about what that means. If you look at these words, all 3 of them I put main. And then the first 2 I put extracellular, and the potassium I put intracellular. So when we look at electrolytes, or when we think about fluid in our body, we think about them as being in one of 2 places, in our cells or outside of our cells. Always. So when I think of sodium, I think of 2 things. Like it just comes into my head. I never think of sodium by itself. I think of the charge that it has, positive. So always in my head, Na+. That just pops into my head. And then I'm always thinking extracellular. Sodium likes to hang out outside of your cells, like in your interstitial fluid. Remember like when we drew the houses and the street and the front lawn and the driveway? Some electrolytes like to be in the house. Some electrolytes like to spend all their time like out in the porch and in the front lawn. Those are extracellular. Sodium is the main one. So whenever you see something outside of the cell that's a cation, that's positively charged, it's going to be sodium. So cation means positive, anion means negative. So when you think of minerals, think of 2 things. Are they extracellular or intracellular? And what charge do they have? Are they positive or negative? Cation is positive because the T makes like a little plus. An anion doesn't have a T, doesn't have a plus, so that's like a negative. I don't know. Whatever makes you learn it. So, main extracellular cation. Out of all the positively charged things outside of your cells, sodium's like the main one. It relates to blood volume. You already know that, right? Water follows sodium. If you pee out sodium, you're going to pee out more water. And then we already talked about action potentials. So remember the heart, how like the sodium rushed in and that made depolarization. So that's what I mean. And these are lab levels. If you are familiar with like labs and stuff like that, and you might say, oh, that's not the lab level. It should be 132 to 146 or something. Yeah, you're right. Like every lab's different. In fact, I don't even care if you know this range. Just give me a number in here. Like say maybe 140, around 140. That's good enough. MEQ stands for milliequivalents per liter. So, and that's something that people look at. You go and do a lab if somebody's sick and you want to look at sodium. Do they have hypernatremia, hyponatremia. Natremia means like sodium, right? Hyponatremia means like not enough sodium. That tells me maybe you're dehydrated. But anyway, that's the number. Chloride's used, well, you know what chloride's used for now, right? It's used, I wrote it here, so it's used in hydrochloric acid. Other things also. And it's somewhere around 100 milliequivalents per liter. It's the main extracellular anion. So chloride is always negatively charged. And look, the first two here, sodium and chloride, that's just salt. That's the two parts of salt. So all these things saying, you know, loaded with electrolytes, that's just another way of saying salt. Look at Pediasure and stuff. It's salt. You can make your own. They do in poor countries. This is the rule. Pinch of salt, fist of sugar, liter of water. You'll see, like they'll tell you, like places that have like shitty water systems. Like I've seen it. They drink it like regular drinks, like they drink water. You know, just because all their water's from like one well in the village. It's probably got like a ton of arsenic, and they're always getting. You would think like, oh, when you live in an area like that, you get used to all of that, right? So you're not going to get diarrhea. If we go there, we get diarrhea like right away, and it's true. But they're used to it. That's not actually true. They don't ever get used to it. They're like they get like food poisoning all the time. Like it sucks for them. So, what was my point? So if you're getting diarrhea or something, you know, that's their version of Gatorade. Liter of water, fistful of sugar, pinch of salt, and they make their own. That's it. That's their Gatorade. I mean, that's the same stuff, right? The difference is we've got like lemon, lime, or orange flavor. I don't know why y'all drinking the Arctic Blast or whatever those other flavors are. I like sticking to the fundamentals. Lemon, lime, orange. That's Gatorade. Even the fruit punch, it's not the original Gatorade. All right, anyway. Potassium. If you're going to see something, an electrolyte deficiency, it's going to be potassium. Yeah, and I wrote it at the bottom. I said hypokalemia is the most common deficiency. So it's if you're going to run hypo meaning less, and kalemia is the way to say potassium. You're not going to really see hyperkalemia. You're going to see hypokalemia, people with low potassium. That's common. Right, so potassium's always looked at. It's the main intracellular cation. And remember how the potassium leaving the cell caused repolarization? So it's like really important in things like heartbeat and all your nerves firing. We measure this a little bit different. It's called millimoles per liter. Honestly, whenever you look at this stuff, you're just going to look at numbers. So potassium should be somewhere around 3.5 to 5. There's more, there's more things to look at. That's just, it's just some. I wish I could have given you more. There's a lot more. Okay, but that's a question right there. So 3 electrolytes. I think that's my last slide. It is. Does anyone have any questions? Y'all finally done. See, look here on the side. There's your, go ahead and screenshot that. There's your.
So now we just added an extra one, right?
I already wrote it though. See, it's right here.
It. Oh, okay.
So we got a total of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to pick 5 of these.
Okay.
So you know all your questions. I know you only have 2 days left to study, but hopefully you had been studying the other 10. Perfect timing. All right, if no one has any other questions, that's it.
All right, see you Wednesday.
All right,
Bye,
thank
everybody.
you.
Last virtual.
See you guys Wednesday. I see Hassan talking, but he's muted.
I just joined. That's not fair.
What?
What you mean Wednesday? What is going on with this test?
We just
You are so late.
clearly
late.
discussed it.
You should have jumped
What did we
on.
discuss?
I gave everyone the questions. It's all done.
That's the questions right there
Where?
on the
Plus
screen.
the 33.
Out of who? So you expect us to remember 33 fully rotated construction response questions about the human body?
Did you say roted?
He sure did.
Don't change the subject, Mr. Klaus.
You need to know 10 of them, and those in my defense a little bit, those are old test questions.
Okay,
You've seen them before.
I trust
Those
you.
10 questions that you're going to have, you've seen on other tests. I know that doesn't make things a lot better, but it's not completely.
Oh, why are you recording still, dude? Turn it off.
Oh yeah, I am recording. Hold on, let me shut this off.
Come on, bro. You got me looking ratchet out here. I just saw the messages on
Now,
our
are
group
you
chat.
gonna
I'm like,
post